My name is Rebecca Mitchell, 34, marketing executive in Boston with the corner office I worked 10 years to earn. Funny how success in your career means nothing when your family decides you're not worth keeping around. I still remember the exact moment, fork halfway to my mouth at our monthly dinner, when I asked about the annual reunion. I never expected James to look me dead in the eyes and say those 3 words that shattered everything. "You're not invited." Before I tell you how my own family betrayed me and how I found the strength to rebuild, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if family drama hits close to home. Sometimes the family we choose matters more than the one we're born into. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, our family portrait seemed perfect from the outside, 4 smiling faces against a backdrop of privilege and opportunity. But portraits only show what people want you to see. Behind our smiles was an unspoken hierarchy, with my brother James, 4 years older, permanently installed at the top. James was always the golden child, class president, varsity quarterback, Harvard Law graduate. Our parents, Eleanor and Robert Mitchell, never missed an opportunity to remind me how exceptional my brother was. My mother, a retired English professor with perfect posture and exacting standards, saved her warmest smiles for James. My father, a cardiothoracic surgeon whose approval I craved more than anything, spent weekends teaching James to golf and discussing investments. They were grooming him for greatness while I was left trying to discover what would finally make them notice me. Don't misunderstand, my parents provided everything material I could need. Our house in Greenwich had 5 bedrooms and a pool. I attended the best private schools. We vacationed in Europe. But emotional sustenance was served with strict portion control, and James always got the larger share. Despite living in my brother's shadow, I carved out my own path. While James followed our father's expectations to perfection, I pursued marketing, creative enough to satisfy my artistic inclinations, but practical enough not to trigger my parents' disapproval. After graduating from Boston University, I landed a job at Anderson & Palmer, one of the top marketing firms in New England. 10 years of 60-hour weeks, missed vacations, and relentless networking had finally paid off with my promotion to executive creative director last month. This promotion was big, the kind of achievement that might finally earn that nod of approval from my father, maybe even the words "I'm proud of you" that I'd heard directed at James countless times. I planned to announce it at our monthly family dinner, a tradition my mother instituted years ago to maintain proper family connections as we all got busier. Beyond the monthly dinners, our family had one sacred tradition: the annual week-long reunion at my parents' summer home in the Hamptons. Every August since I could remember, we gathered with extended family for 7 days of beach outings, elaborate meals, and cocktail parties, where my parents showcased their perfect family. Despite the undercurrent of comparison and competition, I loved these reunions. They represented belonging, however imperfect. The night of the fateful dinner, I spent extra time getting ready. I wore a navy blue dress that projected success without seeming like I was trying too hard. I picked up an expensive bottle of my father's favorite Cabernet and practiced announcing my promotion in a casual way that wouldn't seem boastful. The entire drive to Greenwich, I rehearsed how I'd guide the conversation toward work naturally. Memories of past reunions played through my mind as I drove, collecting seashells with my cousin Allison as a child, teenage years sunbathing and gossiping about boys, and more recently bringing my fiancé Daniel to meet everyone. That last memory stung. Daniel and I had been engaged for 9 months before he left me for my cousin Allison 2 years ago. The betrayal had been devastating, but I'd worked hard to move forward. This would be the first reunion since their wedding, which I'd declined to attend. Still, as I pulled into my parents' circular driveway, I felt hopeful. My professional life was finally where I wanted it. Maybe this would be the dinner where things started to change with my family too. Maybe my news would finally shift the dynamics that had been set in stone since childhood. With my promotion announcement in my back pocket and plans to discuss the upcoming reunion, I grabbed the wine and walked to the door with a genuine smile. The Mitchell family home stood, as it always had, a colonial masterpiece with perfect landscaping and warm light spilling from every window. I rang the doorbell out of formality, though I still had a key. My mother answered, her silver bob precisely styled, wearing cream-colored slacks and a cashmere sweater despite the summer heat. "Rebecca, right on time," she said, offering her cheek for my kiss. Her perfume, Chanel No. 5, unchanged since my childhood, enveloped me briefly. My father appeared behind her, drink already in hand. "There she is," he said, with his standard greeting, patting my shoulder awkwardly. In the living room, James and his wife Natalie were already settled with drinks. My brother stood when I entered, a reflexive courtesy our parents had instilled, but his hug was perfunctory. James had our father's tall build and commanding presence, dressed in a button-down shirt that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Hey sis," he said immediately, returning to the investment discussion he'd been having with our father. Natalie offered an air kiss and compliment that felt rehearsed. "Love the dress. Banana Republic has such quality basics." The designer label I'd splurged on went unacknowledged, whether intentionally or not. My mother handed me a glass of white wine without asking if that's what I wanted, and directed us to the dining room. The table was set with the formal china and crystal standard for our monthly dinners, regardless of the lack of special occasion. I placed the Cabernet I'd brought near my father's place setting, but he barely glanced at it before continuing his conversation with James. "Dinner is served," my mother announced as our family cook. Maria brought out the first course, butternut squash soup with brown butter and sage. My parents had hired Maria when I was in high school, and she'd been with them ever since. As we settled into our usual places, father and mother at the ends, James and Natalie on one side, me alone on the other, I searched for the right moment to share my news. The soup bowls were cleared, and the main course of herb-crusted rack of lamb appeared. So I began during a brief pause. "I have some exciting news from work." "James," my father interrupted, apparently not hearing me. "How's the Jenkins merger coming along? Your firm stands to make quite a windfall if you pull that off." James launched into the details of a corporate acquisition his law firm was handling. I took a large sip of wine and tried again when he finished. "Actually, I just got some good news myself. Anderson and Palmer had—" "Oh, before I forget," my mother cut in, turning to Natalie, "did you get a chance to look at those interior designers I recommended?" The Blakely residence was featured in Architectural Digest last month, and their living room was absolute perfection. The pattern continued through the main course. Each attempt I made to share my promotion was derailed by questions directed at James or comments about topics that excluded me. I pushed lamb around my plate, appetite diminishing with each failed conversation entry. As Maria cleared our plates and brought out dessert, poached pears with vanilla cream, James cleared his throat dramatically. "Actually, we have an announcement," he said, reaching for Natalie's hand. "We weren't going to say anything yet, but since we're all together, Natalie and I are expecting." My mother gasped in delight. My father stood immediately to shake James's hand, then awkwardly hugged Natalie. "A grandchild. When are you due?" my mother asked, practically vibrating with excitement. "November," Natalie said, glowing with satisfaction. "We've already started converting the guest room into a nursery." What followed was 20 minutes of questions about the pregnancy names they were considering and my father's immediate offers to connect them with the best obstetrician in New York. I offered genuine congratulations, but no one seemed to notice. My promotion announcement now seemed trivial in comparison, so I kept it to myself. As dessert concluded and coffee was served, the conversation naturally turned to upcoming plans. "We should discuss the reunion," my mother said. "I'm thinking of having it catered this year rather than expecting Maria to handle everything." My interest piqued. The reunion was something I could enthusiastically participate in. "That sounds nice. When exactly is it happening? I need to request the time off." A strange silence fell over the table. James and my parents exchanged looks that sent a chill down my spine. "What?" I asked, looking between them. James set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. "Rebecca," he said in his lawyer voice, "you're not invited." The words hit me like a physical blow. I laughed reflexively, sure it was a bizarre joke. "What are you talking about?" No one laughed with me. My father became intensely interested in his coffee. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "We thought it would be best considering the circumstances," my mother finally said. "What circumstances?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. James sighed as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Daniel and Allison will be there. We all agreed it would be awkward." The room tilted slightly as understanding dawned. My family had chosen my ex-fiancé and the cousin he'd left me for over me. The betrayal was so unexpected, so complete, that for a moment I couldn't form words. "You're uninviting me from our family reunion because my ex is coming," I finally managed. The silence that followed was answer enough. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly in the silence. I looked at each face around the table, my father's discomfort, my mother's rigid posture, James's cool assessment, and Natalie's barely concealed satisfaction. "Someone explain," I said, my voice unnaturally steady despite the trembling that had started in my hands. "Now." James took the lead, his tone condescending as if explaining something to a difficult client. "Daniel has been part of this family for years, Rebecca. Just because your relationship didn't work out doesn't mean we cut ties with him." Didn't work out, I echoed incredulously. He left me for Allison 6 weeks before our wedding. And that was unfortunate, my mother interjected her tone, suggesting she was discussing a minor fender bender rather than the implosion of my life. But we've all moved forward. Daniel and Allison are married now. The casual dismissal of my pain ignited something in me. So I'm being punished because I was the one who got hurt. How is that fair? My father finally spoke, his surgeon's composure firmly in place. No one is being punished, Rebecca. We're simply trying to avoid an uncomfortable situation. You've always been sensitive. Sensitive. The word felt like an accusation. Dramatic Natalie added helpfully. You tend to make scenes. I stared at her in disbelief before turning back to my parents. When have I ever made a scene? Name one time. My mother sighed. The Christmas when James got the car and you got the bracelet. I was 16, and you gave him a BMW while I got costume jewelry. This is exactly what we mean, James said with smug satisfaction. Always keeping score, always the victim. I took a deep breath, trying to process what was happening. So you've all been in regular contact with Daniel, even after what he did. The glances exchanged around the table told me everything. He's a connection at Sullivan & Croft, my father said, referring to Daniel's investment banking firm. Your brother does business with him, and Allison is family, my mother added. I'm family, I whispered. Natalie leaned forward. Daniel asked specifically if you would be at the reunion. He and Allison are concerned about awkwardness. We assured them you'd understand. The second blow landed harder than the first. You discussed this with them before talking to me. More silence. When did you make this decision? I asked. My mother examined her manicure. We've been discussing it for a while. Actually, James said, checking his watch as if the conversation was running inconveniently long. We had dinner with them last month to discuss it. The revelation stole my breath. Last month you had dinner with them. At Dovetail, my father confirmed, referring to an upscale restaurant in Manhattan. Your mother wanted to see them before they left for their anniversary trip to Bali. Each new detail was another knife. They had celebrated my cousin's anniversary with my ex-fiancé, an anniversary that only existed because they had betrayed me at an expensive restaurant I had often mentioned wanting to try. So while I was alone in Boston thinking my family at least was on my side, you were all having dinner with the two people who hurt me most in the world. Now you're being melodramatic again, James said with an eye roll. This is why we made the decision without you. You always make everything about yourself. This is about me. My voice finally broke its careful control. You're uninviting Emmy from a family event to accommodate the man who left me at the altar. We never officially sent out invitations, my mother said primly, as if this technicality somehow absolved them. So you aren't being uninvited. I turned to my father, a last desperate appeal. Dad. He met my eyes briefly before looking away. Your mother and brother are right, Rebecca. It's what's best for everyone. Everyone except me, I said, pushing back from the table. My chair made a harsh scraping sound against the hardwood floor. See, this is exactly the kind of reaction we wanted to avoid, James said, gesturing at me, as if I were Exhibit A in a courtroom demonstration. You're proving our point. What point? That I have feelings, that I expected my family to choose me over the man who humiliated me. How unreasonable of me. It's been 2 years, Natalie said, with exaggerated patience. Most people would have moved on by now. I laughed bitterly. I had moved on. I came here tonight excited to tell you all about my promotion to executive creative director, but none of you bothered to ask about my life. You were too busy planning how to exclude me from our family tradition. A flicker of something surprise, maybe even guilt, crossed my father's face, but it vanished quickly. Congratulations, he said flatly. Too late. I stood shaking. I've spent my entire life trying to measure up to be good enough for this family. I've tolerated being second best to James in everything. But this is unforgivable. You're overreacting, my mother said. Sit down and finish your coffee. No. The word came out stronger than I expected. I'm done pretending we're a normal family. Normal families don't exile a member to make things more comfortable for the people who hurt them. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. No one followed me. No one called out. As I pulled my car out of the driveway, I glanced back at the house, all those warm lights now seeming like a cruel illusion of welcome. Through the dining room window, I could see them still seated at the table heads, bent together in conversation, probably discussing what a scene I'd made by leaving. The family portrait had finally revealed its true image, and I wasn't in it. The drive back to Boston passed in a blur. I kept replaying the dinner conversation, searching for clues I'd missed, signs that should have warned me my family had chosen sides long ago. Twice I had to pull over because tears made it impossible to see the road. At one point, distracted by the loop of James's words in my head, "You're not invited," I nearly sideswiped a truck merging onto the highway. By the time I reached my apartment, it was after midnight. The sleek one-bedroom I'd been so proud to afford in Back Bay now felt cold and empty. I kicked off my heels in the entryway and noticed my phone had several missed calls, all from work, none from my family. I collapsed onto my couch, still in my navy dress, and finally let myself break down completely. The sobs came from somewhere deep and primal, years of accumulated hurt crashing through the walls I'd built to contain them. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen, until the elegant dress was stained with mascara and salt. Morning came with no relief. I called in sick for the first time in 3 years, unable to face congratulations on my promotion when I felt so fundamentally rejected. My boss Margaret texted to check if I was okay. I replied with a vague excuse about food poisoning. The day stretched endlessly. I tried calling my mother, thinking perhaps after a night's reflection she might have reconsidered. The call went to voicemail. I texted my father, "Can we talk about last night?" Read, but no response. By evening, I had moved from devastation to anger. I drafted several scathing emails to James but deleted them all unsent. Instead, I opened a bottle of wine and scrolled through social media, a mistake. There was my cousin Allison, posting beach photos from Bali, with Daniel both tanned and smiling. The caption read, "Making memories with my soulmate. Number, blessed number, mento bemine." The hashtag sent me into another spiral. Daniel had used those exact words in his vows at our rehearsal dinner. "I always knew you were meant to be mine." Apparently he'd recycled the sentiment for his wedding to my cousin. The next day at work, I moved through meetings like a ghost. I nodded at appropriate intervals and made decisions on campaign strategies, but I felt disconnected from everything around me. Megan Williams, our account director and the closest thing I had to a friend at the firm, noticed immediately. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, cornering me in the break room. "And you never miss work. What's going on?" I tried to deflect with another food poisoning comment, but Megan wasn't buying it. "Come to dinner with me tonight," she insisted. I'm not taking no for an answer. Over Thai food that I mostly pushed around my plate, the whole story spilled out: Daniel and Allison's betrayal, my family's betrayal, the reunion I'd been attending since childhood that was now off limits. "That's the most fucked up thing I've ever heard," Megan declared loud enough that diners at nearby tables turned to look. "Your family is choosing your cheating ex over you. That's not just wrong, it's cruel." Her outrage was validating. For the first time since the dinner, I felt like my reaction wasn't unreasonable. "I always knew my brother was the favorite," I said, "but I never thought they'd go this far. They made me feel crazy for being upset." "That's gaslighting," Megan said firmly. "They hurt you, then made you feel like you're the problem for being hurt." The term resonated. I'd heard it before but never applied it to my family dynamics. Back at home that night, I made the mistake of checking Instagram again. My brother had posted photos from a weekend sailing trip with my parents. Everyone smiling, cocktails in hand, without a care in the world. I zoomed in on their faces, searching for any sign that my absence was felt. There was none. The third betrayal came a week later. An email from my mother addressed to the extended family but accidentally including me. "We're looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion August 15 to 22. James and Natalie will be sharing their baby news, and we'll be celebrating Daniel and Allison's first anniversary. It promises to be a special week." No mention of why I wouldn't be there. No acknowledgement of the empty seat at the table. I had been erased. Work became my only refuge, but even there I couldn't fully escape. My promotion announcement was met with congratulations and a small office celebration, but the achievement felt hollow now. What good was success if the people whose approval I'd sought my entire life weren't there to acknowledge it? The physical toll began to show. I lost 7 pounds in 2 weeks. Dark circles appeared under my eyes from nights spent staring at the ceiling. My hair started falling out in the shower, coming away in clumps when I ran my fingers through it. Megan noticed and dragged me to her regular yoga class, insisting movement would help. I went through the motions, but when the instructor ended class with "Now honor your truth," I fled to the bathroom and threw up. What was my truth? That my family had never really loved me the way I needed them to. That I'd spent my entire life trying to earn affection that was freely given to my brother. That the people who should have protected me from hurt had instead become its source. By the time July turned to August, I'd hit rock bottom. I took more sick days. I stopped answering texts. I ordered delivery instead of cooking, and sometimes didn't eat at all. My apartment, usually immaculate, collected dirty dishes and piles of unwashed clothes. On what should have been the first day of the reunion, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine watching the sunset and wondering how I'd become so utterly alone at 34. I had built my life around an illusion, the idea that if I just achieved enough, succeeded enough, my family would finally see me. Now that illusion had shattered and I didn't know what was left. "You're coming with me tonight," Megan announced, barging into my office and closing the door behind her. It was a Friday in mid-August, exactly when the reunion would be in full swing. "I have plans," I lied. "Netflix and self-pity aren't plans," she countered. "My friend's band is playing at this bar in Cambridge. A bunch of us are going. You need to be around people who don't suck." I started to refuse, but the determination in Megan's eyes told me resistance was futile. "Fine," I conceded. "But I'm leaving after one drink if I'm not having fun." The bar was crowded and noisy, filled with young professionals unwinding after the work week. Megan introduced me to her friends, a diverse group who welcomed me without the evaluating looks I was accustomed to from my family's social circle. They asked questions and actually listened to my answers. During the band's break, I found myself talking to Jason Bennett, a freelance photographer with kind eyes and an easy laugh. He didn't look impressed when I mentioned my job title, which was strangely refreshing. "So what made you go into marketing?" he asked, genuinely curious. The question caught me off guard. Most people asked about clients or campaigns, not my motivation. Honestly, it was a compromise, I admitted. Creative enough to satisfy me, but practical enough to satisfy my parents. And did it satisfy them, I mean? I laughed humorlessly. Nothing ever really does. Instead of the awkward platitude I expected, Jason nodded with understanding. "I get that. My father still introduces me as his son who takes pictures instead of saying I'm a photographer. Like I'm a kid with a hobby, instead of someone who's been published in National Geographic." That led to a conversation about family expectations and the impossible standards we internalize. Jason had walked away from a promising law career to pursue photography, enduring years of his family's disappointment. "The hardest part was realizing I'd never get their approval for my choices," he said. "But once I accepted that I could make decisions based on what I actually wanted, the concept was revolutionary to me. What would I choose if I weren't constantly seeking my family's approval?" Later that weekend, a notification popped up on Facebook. Sophia Henderson had tagged me in a photo. Sophia had been my best friend in middle school before her family moved to Chicago. The photo was from our 8th grade dance, both of us in awkward formal dresses with braces and terrible hairstyles. I messaged her immediately, and we arranged a video call. Seeing her face, older now, but still with the same bright eyes and infectious smile, brought back a flood of memories from before family dynamics became so complicated. After catching up on careers and relationships, I hesitantly shared what had happened with my family. Sophia wasn't surprised. "Your brother always had it out for you," she said bluntly. "Remember when he told Kevin Miller you had lice, so he wouldn't ask you to the freshman dance? Or when he accidentally spilled soda on your college application essay the night before it was due?" I had forgotten those incidents, or rather had filed them away as normal sibling rivalry. But hearing them now from Sophia's perspective cast them in a different light. "Did you know James used to tell guys at school that you had emotional problems?" she continued. "After Rick Sanders asked for your number, James pulled him aside and said you were unstable. Rick told my brother about it years later." The revelation hit me hard. I'd always wondered why certain boys suddenly stopped talking to me after showing interest. The pattern continued in college with promising relationships that mysteriously fizzled out. "Why would he do that?" I asked, genuinely bewildered. Sophia's expression softened. "Bex, your brother couldn't stand that you might outshine him in anything. You were smarter, more creative, better with people. Your parents might not have seen it, but everyone else did." Her words were like water in a desert I hadn't known I was crossing. For so long I'd accepted my family's narrative that James was the exceptional one, the natural leader, the success story. The possibility that my brother had actively sabotaged me out of insecurity had never occurred to me. Encouraged by these new perspectives, I finally did something I should have done years ago. I made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Catherine Chen specialized in family dynamics and listened without judgment as I poured out 3 decades of hurt and confusion. "What you're describing sounds like a classic golden child divided by scapegoat dynamic," she explained in our 3rd session. "Your brother was designated as the family success story, which means any problems must be attributed to someone else, in this case you." "But my parents aren't terrible people," I protested. "They provided everything I needed." Material provision and emotional nurturing are different things, Dr. Chen said gently. Your family gave you everything except the one thing you actually needed, unconditional acceptance. Over the next few weeks, therapy helped me see patterns I'd been blind to my entire life. How my accomplishments were always measured against James's. How my parents had subtly reinforced the idea that expressing hurt was being dramatic. How I'd internalized the message that my worth was tied to achievement and approval. The hardest part of this work, Dr. Chen told me, is accepting that your family may never provide what you need. The question becomes, can you stop seeking it from them and find it elsewhere or within yourself? The question haunted me. I'd built my entire identity around trying to earn my family's approval. Who would I be without that driving force? Then came the fourth betrayal. A cousin on my mother's side messaged me. Missed you at the reunion, James said. You decided not to come because you're too busy with work. Always the career woman, hoped to see you at Christmas. My brother had rewritten the narrative, making my exclusion sound like my choice. The final manipulation was taking away my right to even be the victim of their rejection. I called Dr. Chen for an emergency session. They're controlling the story, I said, pacing her office. Everyone thinks I chose work over family when they're the ones who uninvited me. Dr. Chen watched me calmly. Does it matter what the extended family thinks? Of course it matters. They think I'm the problem. Why do their opinions have such power over you? The question stopped me mid-pace. Why did it matter? These were relatives I saw once a year, people who had apparently accepted Daniel and Allison's relationship, without question people who took James's word as gospel. Because I struggled to articulate it. Because they're family, they're supposed to be on my side. Are they though? Dr. Chen asked. Or have you just been taught that blood relationships automatically deserve loyalty, regardless of how they treat you? Something shifted inside me. The unwavering belief in family obligation that had governed my life began to crack, letting in new possibilities like light through a broken window. The decision to confront my family didn't come easily. Dr. Chen and I spent 2 sessions discussing whether it was necessary for my healing. Eventually, we agreed that speaking my truth, regardless of how they received it, would help me move forward. Your goal isn't to change their minds, she cautioned. It's to express your feelings without managing theirs. Their reaction is not your responsibility. I rehearsed what I wanted to say, focusing on I statements rather than accusations. I planned to be firm, but not hostile, clear, but not vindictive. Still, as I drove to Connecticut on a crisp September Saturday, anxiety twisted my stomach into knots. I'd called my mother to say I was coming to discuss what had happened. She'd sounded wary but agreed clearly, hoping for reconciliation on their terms. When I arrived, I was surprised to find James's car in the driveway. My mother hadn't mentioned he would be there. My father opened the door with an awkward half-smile. Rebecca, good to see you. The formal living room was set for tea, my mother's standard approach to difficult conversations, as if proper serving pieces could somehow contain messy emotions. James sat in an armchair looking like he was prepared for a deposition. Natalie thankfully wasn't present. Thank you for coming, my mother said, pouring tea I didn't want. We've been concerned. I took a deep breath. I'm here because I need to say some things about what happened in July. About being excluded from the reunion. James sighed heavily. Are we still on this? It's been 2 months. Yes, we're still on this, I replied, keeping my voice steady. You uninvited me from a family tradition I've attended my entire life to accommodate the man who left me for our cousin. Then you told the family I chose not to come. Those actions hurt me deeply and we need to talk about why they happened. My mother set down her teacup with a sharp clink. We've already explained our reasoning. We wanted to avoid awkwardness. Whose awkwardness? Not mine. I wasn't invited. You were protecting Daniel and Allison from the consequences of their actions at my expense. My father shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca, sometimes in life we have to make difficult choices for the greater good. The greater good, I repeated. Dad, you're not performing triage on a battlefield. This was a family vacation. And you decided I was the expendable one. There you go again, James interjected, making everything so dramatic. I turned to him, newfound clarity straightening my spine. No, James. I'm not being dramatic. I'm expressing hurt over a genuine betrayal. There's a difference. Just like there's a difference between being sensitive and being gaslit. My brother rolled his eyes, but I continued before he could interrupt. Did you tell Kevin Miller I had lice in 9th grade so he wouldn't ask me to the dance? I asked. James's momentary surprise confirmed Sophia's story before he covered it with a laugh. That was 14 years ago. Are you seriously bringing up high school drama? Did you tell guys at school I was emotionally unstable? Another flicker of surprise. I might have warned a few people that you were intense. I was looking out for them. And you? No, you were sabotaging me. The realization crystallized as I spoke. You've always been threatened by me, haven't you? Anytime something good happened in my life, you found a way to undermine it. That's ridiculous, James scoffed, but the flush creeping up his neck told another story. My mother intervened. This isn't productive, Rebecca. We invited you here to move forward, not dredge up ancient history. Actually, you didn't invite me. I invited myself, and we can't move forward without addressing what happened. Not just the reunion, but the patterns that led to it. I turned back to James. Did you suggest uninviting me from the reunion, or was it Daniel and Allison's idea? His hesitation told me everything. It was your idea, wasn't it? You saw another opportunity to push me out and you took it. They were concerned about awkwardness, he said defensively. I was solving a problem before it started. By creating a much bigger problem for me, I countered. Did you ever consider suggesting they skip 1 year instead? Judging by the guilty glances exchanged, they hadn't. My father cleared his throat. James had valid concerns. Your reaction to seeing Daniel and Allison could have created tension for everyone. Why do you always assume the worst of me? I asked, genuinely curious. When have I ever caused a scene or created drama at family events? Silence. You're so quick to protect everyone else's feelings. When has anyone in this family protected mine? More silence. I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval, I said, looking at each of them in turn. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is, to constantly feel like you're auditioning for a role in your own family? My mother's eyes glistened with what might have been tears. We've always been proud of you, Rebecca. Have you? Because I got promoted to executive creative director in July, the youngest in the company's history. I was going to tell you at dinner that night, but no one asked about my work. You were too busy planning my exclusion. My father looked genuinely shocked. That's a significant achievement. It is, I agreed, but I realized something recently. Even if you had congratulated me that night, it wouldn't have filled the hole. Because the problem isn't that I haven't achieved enough. The problem is that nothing I achieve will ever be enough for this family. That's not fair, my mother protested. Isn't it James makes partner, and you throw a party? I make executive director, and you can't even work up curiosity about my career. The difference isn't in our accomplishments, it's in how you value them. And us. James stood abruptly. This is exactly why we made the decision without you. You're turning a simple logistical choice into a referendum on your entire life. I met his gaze steadily. It wasn't simple or logistical to me, James. It was a profound rejection from the people who are supposed to love me most. And your dismissal of my feelings now only confirms that I've been right all along. My father rubbed his forehead. What do you want from us, Rebecca? An apology. Fine, we're sorry you were hurt. But what's done is done. His words were so inadequate that they were almost funny. What I want is recognition of the patterns that led us here. What I want is for you to understand that your choices have consequences for our relationship moving forward. What I want is for all of you to do better. I stood gathering my purse. There was more I could have said, more specific hurts I could have enumerated, but I realized it wouldn't change anything. They were who they were. The question was, who would I be now? I love you all, I said, surprised to find. I meant it despite everything. But I can't keep trying to earn a place in this family. Either I have one unconditionally or I don't. That's for you to decide. I walked out without waiting for their response, the click of the front door behind me sounding like the period at the end of a very long sentence. The confrontation with my family left me feeling both drained and oddly liberated, like I'd set down a heavy backpack I'd been carrying for miles without realizing it. For the first time in my adult life, I stopped checking my phone compulsively for messages from my parents or brother. I stopped mentally rehearsing announcements of achievements that might finally impress them. Instead, I focused on the people who actually showed up for me. Megan and I began having regular Friday dinners, sometimes joined by her eclectic group of friends, who gradually became mine too. We tried new restaurants, went to art exhibitions, took a weekend trip to a vineyard in the Finger Lakes. Through it all, I marveled at how easy it was to be around people who had no preconceived notions about who I should be. Jason, the photographer from the bar, asked for my number that night and called the next day. No games, no manipulation. Our first date lasted 6 hours, conversation flowing so naturally that we closed down the restaurant. On our third date, he showed me his portfolio, breathtaking images of everyday people and extraordinary moments of joy or contemplation. I like capturing people as they really are, not how they present themselves to the world, he explained. The statement resonated deeply. How much of my life had been about presentation rather than authenticity, about achieving rather than experiencing, about proving worth rather than assuming it. At work, I approached my new executive role with renewed confidence. Without the desperate need to prove myself to my family, I made decisions based on what I actually believed was right for the campaigns and the company. My team responded to this authentic leadership with increased creativity and commitment. Margaret, my boss, commented on the change during a quarterly review. Whatever's happened in the last few months agrees with you, Rebecca. You've always been excellent at the work, but now you seem to actually enjoy it. The reunion weekend came and went. Instead of torturing myself imagining the gathering I'd been excluded from, I joined Jason on a camping trip to the White Mountains. We hiked during the day and talked by the campfire at night, sharing stories and dreams under a canopy of stars. I took pictures with my phone, while he used his professional camera, patiently teaching me about composition and light. You have a good eye, he said, reviewing my amateur attempts. You see things others might miss. In therapy, Dr. Chen helped me process what those things might be. The subtle dynamics in relationships, the unspoken communications, the patterns that repeat across generations. My sensitivity, long framed as a weakness by my family, was actually a strength in many contexts, at work and friendships, even in my budding relationship with Jason. You've been taught to see your perceptiveness as overreaction, Dr. Chen observed. What if it's actually a gift? I began reconnecting with extended family on my terms. My mother's sister, Aunt Linda, had always been warmer than my parents. When I called her out of the blue, she was delighted to hear from me. I missed you at the reunion, she said. James mentioned you were too busy with work, but that didn't sound like you. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. Actually, I wasn't invited. They thought it would be awkward with Daniel and Allison there. Her shocked silence spoke volumes. They uninvited you, their own daughter, that's... I don't even have words. The validation from someone within the family circle meant more than I expected. Aunt Linda invited me to visit her in Philadelphia, and our weekend together healed something I hadn't realized was broken: my connection to my family heritage, beyond my immediate family. Through Aunt Linda, I reconnected with cousins on my mother's side, who had always been friendly but distant due to geography. They expressed similar shock about my exclusion from the reunion, and shared their own stories of family tensions and reconciliations. Sophia and I maintained our renewed friendship through regular video calls. She visited Boston in October, and we spent a weekend exploring the city as adults, reminiscing about childhood adventures, and marveling at the paths our lives had taken. I always knew you'd be successful, she said over dinner. You were the smartest person I knew even when we were kids. I was a neurotic mess, I laughed. You were driven, she corrected. And thoughtful. You noticed when people were sad or left out. You made me feel seen when no one else did. Her words made me reconsider countless childhood memories that I'd viewed through the lens of family criticism. What if I hadn't been too sensitive but appropriately empathetic? What if I hadn't been making everything about myself but simply advocating for my needs like anyone deserves to do? As the weeks passed, I heard through family grapevine that not all was well in the perfect family portrait I'd been excluded from. James and Natalie were having difficulties, though no one specified what kind. Daniel and Allison's marriage was showing strain. Apparently, the man who'd cheated with her had begun cheating on her. I took no pleasure in these developments, which surprised me. 6 months ago, I might have felt vindicated by their troubles. Now I just felt sad for everyone involved and grateful to be building something healthier for myself. The weekend the reunion would have taken place, I deleted all social media apps from my phone to avoid seeing photos. Now I reinstalled them, and found I could scroll through vacation pictures from extended family, without the stab of pain I'd expected. They were just people living their lives, not judges whose approval I needed to earn. Through therapy, I began to understand that my family's treatment of me wasn't a reflection of my worth, but of their limitations. My parents had replicated patterns from their own upbringings. James had acted out of insecurity rather than malice, though the effect was the same. Understanding didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped me stop internalizing it as evidence of my inadequacy. By November, when Jason invited me to join his family for Thanksgiving, I felt ready to experience a different kind of family gathering. His parents, warm, creative people who had eventually made peace with their son's career change, welcomed me without evaluation. His sister teased him mercilessly and included me in inside jokes. No one commented on my clothes or career or relationship status as if they were metrics of my value. "Your family is amazing," I told Jason as we drove back to Boston. "They're okay," he said with a smile. "They've come a long way. You should have seen us 10 years ago when I quit law school. Dad didn't speak to me for months." "How did you get past it?" He considered for a moment. "Time helped. But mostly I stopped needing them to understand my choices. I just lived my life and let them catch up when they were ready. It was exactly what I was learning to do, to live authentically, without requiring validation from people who might never be able to give it." Instead of planning an elaborate Christmas with my family as I usually would, I booked a photography workshop in Colorado that Jason had mentioned wanting to attend. We spent the holiday week in a cozy mountain lodge, learning new techniques by day and talking by firelight in the evenings. I sent my parents a simple card and gift without expectations for the response. On New Year's Eve, surrounded by my new circle of friends at Megan's apartment, I realized something profound. I was happy. Not the conditional achievement-based happiness I'd chased for decades, but a steady contentment that came from living aligned with my values rather than others' expectations. At midnight, as everyone cheered and embraced, Jason pulled me close. "You know what I wish for you this year?" he asked. "What's that?" "That you keep becoming more of who you already are," he said. "Because that person is pretty amazing." In his eyes, I saw what I'd been searching for my entire life, not blind adoration or conditional approval, but true seeing. And for the first time, I believed what I saw reflected there. The text from my mother arrived on a crisp January morning as I was getting ready for work. "Your father and I have been doing some thinking. Could we meet to talk? Just the three of us." I stared at the message for a long time, emotions cycling through me: hope, wariness, a reflexive eagerness to please, and the new steadier voice that had emerged in recent months urging caution. I showed the text to Jason over coffee. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think it's promising they're reaching out," he said carefully. "But what matters is what you think, what you want." 6 months ago, I would have immediately agreed to whatever terms they set, pathetically grateful for any attention. Now I took time to consider what would actually work for me. "I'd like to meet you," I replied after breakfast. "But not at the house. Could we meet at Westfield Cafe next Saturday at 1? The neutral location would prevent falling into old patterns." My mother agreed. The week leading up to our meeting, I worked with Dr. Chen on maintaining boundaries while remaining open to genuine change. "Remember, reconciliation doesn't mean returning to the relationship exactly as it was," she cautioned. "It means creating something new that respects who you all are now." I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early, choosing a table near the back for privacy. My parents entered together looking somewhat diminished from how I remembered them, my father's posture less commanding, my mother's steps less certain. After awkward greetings and ordering coffee, my father cleared his throat. "We've missed you, Rebecca." Simple words, but they caught me off guard. In our family, emotions had always been expressed indirectly, if at all. "Things have been difficult since you left," my mother added. "It's made us reconsider some things." I waited, determined not to fill the silence or make this easier for them. "We've learned some troubling things," my father continued. "About Daniel and Allison's situation. About James's behavior toward you over the years." My mother's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her napkin. "Allison filed for divorce last month. It seems Daniel was unfaithful. Again. I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "Despite everything, Allison was still my cousin, and I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. She came to us," my mother continued. "Told us things. About how Daniel had pursued her while you were engaged. How James had encouraged it." The revelation landed like a stone in still water, ripples of implications spreading outward. James encouraged Daniel to pursue Allison while he was engaged to me. My father nodded grimly. "Apparently he told Daniel you had doubts about the marriage, that you'd been seeing someone else." "Which was completely untrue," my mother added quickly. The pieces clicked into place: Daniel's sudden coolness in the weeks before he ended our engagement, the specific accusations he'd hurled about my supposed infidelity, the certainty with which he'd claimed "everyone knows." "James and Natalie are having problems as well," my father said. "She's moved back with her parents temporarily." I absorbed this information, trying to find the appropriate response. "I appreciate you telling me this, but why now? Why reach out after months of silence?" My parents exchanged glances. "We've been wrong," my mother said finally, the admission clearly costing her. "About how we handled the reunion. About how we've treated you compared to James. About many things. We let ourselves be manipulated, my father added. By James, by Daniel. We wanted so badly to believe in the narrative of the perfect family that we ignored evidence to the contrary. Part of me wanted to leap at this apology to forgive everything instantly and return to the illusion of family harmony. But the stronger, newer part held back. I appreciate that I said carefully, but I need you to understand how deeply your choices hurt me. This isn't just about the reunion, it's about a lifetime of feeling like I had to earn the love and approval that came naturally to James. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'm so sorry, Rebecca. When I think about how we dismissed your promotion announcement, she shook her head. We've been terrible parents to you. Not terrible, I corrected gently. Just human, with blind spots and mistakes. But those blind spots caused real damage. We talked for over 2 hours, going deeper into family dynamics than we ever had before. My parents shared insights into their own upbringings that helped explain some patterns. My father's emotionally distant father, who measured worth by achievement, my mother's family history of favoring sons over daughters. Understanding didn't erase the hurt, but it helped contextualize it. They weren't monsters. They were flawed people, repeating what they knew. As we prepared to leave, my father asked hesitantly, "Would you consider joining us for Christmas this year? It would mean a lot to have you there." I thought about it. I'd like to, but things need to be different. I can't just slot back into old roles and patterns. Of course, my mother agreed quickly. Whatever you need. And I'd like to bring someone, I added. Jason. He's important to me. The genuine smile that crossed my mother's face surprised me. We'd love to meet him. Our reconciliation progressed slowly over the following months. We established new ways of relating, more direct communication, more acknowledgement of feelings, clearer boundaries. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest in a way our relationship had never been before. James was a more complicated matter. When I finally agreed to see him in March, he arrived without the swagger I was accustomed to. Natalie had filed for divorce, and the golden child was facing consequences for his actions, perhaps for the first time. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said after an awkward start, "but I want you to know I recognize what I did. To you, to Daniel and Allison, to our family. I've been seeing someone, a therapist, about why I felt so threatened by you all these years." The admission was more than I'd ever expected from my proud brother. I'm not ready to forgive everything, I told him honestly, but I'm open to building something different moving forward if you are. It was enough for now. By December, life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined a year earlier. My relationship with Jason had deepened into something solid and nurturing. My career continued to flourish with a major campaign winning industry recognition. My friendship circle had expanded through Megan and Jason's connections, creating a chosen family that supplemented my healing relationship with my blood family. For Christmas, I did something unprecedented. I hosted dinner at my apartment, inviting my parents, Jason's parents, Megan, and a few close friends. James came too subdued, but earnestly trying to navigate his new place in the family dynamic. As I looked around my dining table at the blend of chosen and blood family sharing conversation and laughter, I realized I had created something I never knew was possible, a gathering where I belonged naturally without having to earn my place. Later, as Jason and I washed dishes side by side, he bumped my hip gently with his. "Happy?" he asked. "Yes," I answered without hesitation. Not because everything's perfect, but because I finally understand that I don't need it to be. The journey from that devastating dinner to this peaceful Christmas hadn't been linear or simple. There had been setbacks and difficult conversations, moments of doubt and flashes of old pain. But through it all, I had discovered my own worth separate from family validation or professional achievement. The family portrait had been reframed with me firmly in the picture, not as an afterthought or lesser member, but as a full, equal participant in creating our shared story. As we move into a new year together, I'm grateful for both the painful dinner that broke everything open and the strength I found to build something better from the pieces. Sometimes the words that hurt us most, "you're not invited," become the catalyst for finding where we truly belong. If you've ever felt excluded from your own family narrative, I hope my story reminds you that you deserve a place at the table, even if you have to build that table yourself. Thank you for listening to my journey. If something in this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences in the comments. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family? How did you handle it? Please like, subscribe, and share if my story touched your heart. Your support means the world to me, and I'm grateful we can build this community of healing together.